that's what makes it so critical that however a person chooses to live, and especially if the choice is a healthy lifestyle, that it be sustainable so that they can weather the storm of holidays and weddings and baby showers and all the things that are never going to stop that we want to enjoy.
What if there are things we never had the opportunity to learn? We've all been to school or training, but there are things they never taught us that actually make a powerful difference in life. I'm here to share with you all the pieces you've been missing: mindset, health, success, and more. And we'll all learn together from guests along the way. We may not have learned it the traditional way, but oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do things differently. OMG, Teach Me Tribe. Hello and welcome. This episode is going to be one that you might just want to save and listen to again, is my prediction. So, we are in the winter right now. We are in the holiday season, and maybe you're thinking about the fact that maybe you should eat healthy at least sometimes, or maybe you're feeling a little bit, I like to use the word puffy, after Thanksgiving if you're in the US. And maybe you remember that we've had episodes about gut health and the gut brain connection. And you're thinking, well, I'd love to eat healthy, but it's really hard and I wouldn't know how to do it and I don't have time. So we're going to try to help you solve that. And today I have with me Jessica Mitchell. She is a corporate trained certified health coach and founder and CEO of Level Up Health Coaching with over 19 years of health coaching experience. Understanding how important it is to find a sustainable solution that will support women in getting long-term results, she developed her signature programs designed by a woman who gets it. I love that. She helps women manage weight and disease by saying no to diets and making needed mindset shifts. That's the key, of course, along with implementing proven strategies for true lifestyle change. So welcome, Jessica.
Thank you so much for having me, Cheryl. I am excited to be here for this conversation with you today.
I am so happy you could be here. I think this is going to be a fun one. Okay, I say that every time, but I always think it.
They're always fun. I've listened to them.
Thank you. Thank you. So let's start with how you ended up being a health and lifestyle coach. What's kind of the story that brought you here?
Okay, sure. Thanks for asking that question because it really was the life that I was leading, which is what led me to really want to help other women just so badly because I was so desperate to lose weight. And actually, I started with my weight gain in high school and did the chocolate chip cookie diet somewhere around the ninth or 10th grade. And of course, you know how that is, Cheryl. If you cut your calories, you'll lose weight. So I cut everything out and just started eating chocolate chip cookies, and I lost a ton of weight. Of course, not the way to do that. But when I graduated from high school, I was just slim and trim. But come mid to late 20s, I started putting the weight back on. So that wasn't my first time, but I was really struggling with getting the weight off. And so after trying diet after diet, after diet after diet without success, I actually encountered a health coach. So at this point, I was in insurance and banking, but because I was so skeptical about actually seeing sustainable results, my question to her is, what will make this different? Especially since I really didn't know much about health coaches and what they really did. I mean, is this just a fancy name for another diet person? And so one of the things that she said was, well, you could just become a health coach. And I thought, that's interesting. Well, just maybe I will. And that's what I did because I started thinking that knowing me, the accountability piece would be exactly what I needed. And it certainly has helped. But that is not to imply, Cheryl, that a person has to be a health coach just to have a successful health journey. But it did help. But what it also helped me to see is that it was about lifestyle. So that is why I'm a health and lifestyle coach, because diet and exercise alone just doesn't cut it. There are a lot of different changes that we need to make in our daily routines. And so that's what I adopted in my my life. And along the way, I was helping other women. So I've loved being on this journey, and it's been especially satisfying because I've been able to support other women with something that I'm living every day myself.
Yes, you know, I think often we find our passion when we have to go through something that's a bit of a struggle and we have to find a solution to it, right? So
Yes.
similar.
Yes, yes. Walking that walk and talking that talk and knowing the struggle with breaking the cycle of yo-yo dieting is it's one that I have to share. So, I mean, I never in 100 years would have expected to be in the health and wellness field. And especially if you knew me before, I was the last person doing chocolate chip cookie diets that was ever going to be talking to somebody else about improving their health. But it has been one of the most rewarding pivots that I've ever made in my life.
You know, it's interesting because I think if you looked back at me from many years ago when I used to be complaining all the time and kind of negative, no one would ever think that I would be doing mindset work and having a podcast about it or any of that. So I get it.
Yes, yes, yes. That's the way to change. Just be that, be that and teach it to others. That's the thing. Teaching it to others always reinforces it with ourselves.
Absolutely. I fully agree. Okay. So we know how you got here and we know this is really meaningful to you, but let's kind of now dig into what we're here to talk about. And I will admit to the listeners that I am a person who very much is about eating healthy, but at the same time, I really don't like to cook. And I am now old enough that that's never going to change. Like, I'm just not trying to even pretend like I like to cook. So So one of the challenges to being healthy is cooking, which we're going to talk about, but it's just even, let's start before that. What does it even mean to eat healthy? Tell us what that means to you.
Okay, that's a loaded question because, as you know, there are so many different protocols when it comes to in air quotes, dieting. So when I use that word, I'm really talking about what you're eating. Not going on a diet. So there's so many different ways to do it. And each person who is an expert in that field really believes that theirs is the best way. Again, not a diet, but just different ways that you eat. But I mean, I think that healthy eating really involves the basics. I mean, it is the basics. If we go back to those wheels that we had when we were younger and making sure that you're incorporating, a balance of food groups. Now, of course, as we start to get older, as women in midlife, we know protein is important. But some of the basics are like lots of green vegetables, filling your plate with vegetables, staying away from processed foods when possible. We're busy people, and some of us have children and aging parents. So there may be some occasions we've got to have processed foods. But, when possible, eating plants, not necessarily being plant-based or vegan, but making choices with foods as close to earth as we can get. And since I'm not someone who is necessarily all plant-based or vegan, what that looks like for me is still very healthy choices within each food group. Eating healthy to me also, it touches a little bit on what is sustainable. For instance, because to tell someone that, say, canned vegetables are not healthy, I prefer fresh. And then after that, I prefer frozen. But a healthy choice for someone who hasn't eaten any vegetables might be some canned vegetables.
Yes.
It's really a matter of perspective and starting with some of the basics that we learned probably when we were possibly small, depending on upbringing or maybe even in school. That balance is key. And if that's the focus and we accept some of the obvious that, eating chocolate chip cookies all the time, not all the time, isn't necessarily part of a healthy lifestyle. Now, not all the time. They have their place. But, going on a chocolate chip cookie diet, I think we all know that's not healthy. So some of it I really believe is common sense as far as what is healthy for each person individually, depending on the stage of life they find themselves in.
Right. I like your focus on sustainability and taking not necessarily to mean environmental, although that's good, obviously, but to mean something we can keep doing. It's a sustainable habit. That's a really good point.
Yes, yes. If you know going into something that you cannot see yourself doing this in 6 months or a year, really, as a lifestyle coach, that's where the lifestyle coaching comes in. Why start it? Granted, I mean, you can have a protocol that's pretty strict, and it may get you some immediate results. But, like you said, at this stage of your life, loving to cook, that's not you. That's probably not going to change. Most of the women that I work with, it's about the same. We're not going to just forever give up certain foods. So why enter into a relationship, so to speak, with the strict dieting mentality of things that you can't do. So sustainability starting off is really, really key, which is why it's important to know each person's individual circumstance. And of course, we may adjust goals and even time frames, but at the same time, at least you know that in a year, in 2 years, 5 years, I can still be doing this successfully.
Right. Good point. Yeah. And it's not something that feels like a punishment and you hate doing it and all those other things.
Yes. You won't do it if it's like that. I mean, been there, done that. I would do it for about 2 or 3 weeks, and then that's it.
That's it. And then we go the other way.
We go the other way. So it's just a vicious cycle that I really worked very hard to break in myself and to support others.
Yes, I love it. I think that is going to resonate with people for sure. So we get that. And by the way, if listeners haven't gone back and listened to the gut health episode, that of course I should know the episode number for, but I don't. I'll have to put that in the show notes. She talked about the top thing for gut health being to eat more vegetables. So there you go. You're right on the money. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, when we first talked about doing this, I surprised you a little bit because I wanted you to talk about cooking and healthy cooking done in an easy way. And I think you were a little surprised because you're not necessarily someone who feels like you're a complex cook who gets really into it, right?
Exactly.
But that's why you're the perfect person to talk about this, because we want to make it easy. And I love some of the things that you've told me prior to this about what you do. So first of all, what are some key goals we should have when we're trying to figure out how to create healthy meals that are easy?
I'd say one of the easiest of the key goals is going to be finding ways to incorporate more vegetables. Because the thing with vegetables, especially green vegetables and cruciferous vegetables, is that they're so high in fiber that they fill you up. You can eat as much as you want practically. They're low in calories, high in fiber, low in carbs. And so it helps to fill you up. And of course, just the green vegetables, what it does as far as your vitamins and minerals and all that. So one of the goals for me is, how can I add more vegetables to the plate? And with that goal, it is not always about replacing something else with vegetables. I know you and I talked a little bit about that too, that, I don't think carbs are evil by any means. But as you know, even though I'm not a great cook, I feel like endless ways to use cauliflower rice and squash. And in doing that, I'm just adding more vegetables. And that really should be the goal. There's a lot of, if you Google it, you talk to different coaches, dietitians, nutritionists, how many vegetables should you be eating? I really would love for you to have green vegetables with at least 3 meals a day, 3 of your, and then you've got your snacks. They can be for your snacks too, for that matter. But, fill your plate with vegetables. Have vegetables be the majority of what's on your plate. We don't have to measure necessarily. Have it be the majority. By having lots of vegetables, or I should say that is the goal. The goal is to have as many vegetables as possible. And in doing that, you almost crowd out the things that may not be the healthiest choice.
I like that idea, crowding other things out. Yes. And I love spaghetti squash, actually. So I'm going to have to investigate cauliflower rice a little bit more too, clearly.
Yes, actually, even just cauliflower. I've done some amazing things with cauliflower, and even have been able to trick my family where they had no idea that it was cauliflower. So
really?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So my next question was going to be basically what you just said. So maybe give us some examples of how you've made changes to what your family's eating and still kept it simple and gotten them to eat it.
Okay. So what's been good is that my husband told me that growing up, because they had a garden, there were times that for dinner, all they had was vegetables. vegetable plates. And so he wasn't a hard sell on having more vegetables. So we still will have, generally some type of meat with dinner, but we have quite a few vegetables. And one of the ways that I've incorporated them again is with things like spaghetti squash, cauliflower rice. So we probably have cauliflower, honestly, about 4 days a week,
Wow.
all in different forms. But in order to still keep things healthy, what I'll do, because did we really talk about the fact that I don't like to cook and I don't consider myself really a great cook? Okay, so I'll go maybe to Pinterest or other, quote unquote healthy recipes and just kind of tweak them to our liking because I know what my family likes. So recently I did shrimp scampi over spaghetti squash. Another time I did shrimp Alfredo over spaghetti squash. I added broccoli. So now we've got more than enough vegetables in this dish. And instead of making the full fat Alfredo sauce, I made my own sauce. Imagine that. And just cut back on some of the fat, but added flavor with garlic. Another something that I've done before is actually boiled a head of cauliflower and put it in the blender. So we've had mashed potatoes. Now that was the one that tricked my son.
Yes.
Use just a little bit of butter, lots of fresh garlic, and some chicken stock. So you've got your mashed potatoes. I saved some of that, added a little more milk. I saved it, refrigerated it. A couple days later, added a little more milk and then added some Parmesan and got it to where it was almost like a sauce. And so I poured it over broccoli one day. Okay,
Oh
we
my
eat a lot of
goodness.
broccoli. So it was like, they're going, what is this on this broccoli? And it was actually a sauce made from cauliflower. So
Wow.
I don't have these brilliant ideas. I really don't, because that's just not my thing. I was cooking dinner the other day, Cheryl, and it's like sauces are going up on the ceiling. I'm like, why is everything so messy? And I'm like, it's just because I don't like being in here doing this. Let's be real. But just thinking outside the box. And so I want to say this, that when I'm working with women, they don't come to me because I'm a nutritionist or a dietitian, and certainly not because I'm a chef. But one thing I think it's important, which is what I've done with my family, find out what your family likes. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that too, but finding out what they like and then making some of those changes based on that. There is no real cookie cutter, which goes back to what does healthy look like. So to tell a family that isn't eating any vegetables that you must go to the market and buy all fresh vegetables and then fill up your kids' plates with veggies they don't like, that doesn't work. So
Right.
I know what we like, know how to prepare it, and that's actually how we've been able to have all these vegetables with every meal where everybody's happy to.
Don't you wish sometimes that Living Well had a set of easy steps to follow or maybe a handbook for success? There are certainly many books out there that help, but wouldn't we love some easy tips that we can try right now? I've created for you 7 days of easy, free tips for living well. We're talking about sleep, food, movement, mindset, and a lot more. Even if you pick a few of these suggestions and give them a try, you will be starting down a path to amazing change over time. Make sure to go to www.bit.ly/OMG Teach Me podcast and sign up for your 7-day journey with me. And it sounds like you've been able to still make everything taste good.
Yes, yes. And so I season a lot. My husband really doesn't like salt at all. So you don't have to use a lot of salt and pepper. I really tend to use a lot of garlic and onions, fresh and powdered. And I've got a lot of herbs, different seasonings. I'm always trying something. I tried something about 2 weeks ago and it was not a hit at all. And I said it first. It was like something with the tastes didn't quite come together. And so I didn't eat it. They still ate it. But for the most part, you get a feel for what tastes good, because really I was a foodie in my old life. So I want the food to taste good. But the other thing that I felt it was important to share about, making your food taste good is that there are a few different ingredients that, especially when it comes to cooking more ethnic meals, that may be a little higher in sugar, maybe, have a little fat. And I see why So many dietitians, nutritionists, health coaches talk about eliminating sugar, like you should never have ketchup or barbecue sauce or some of these things. And the reality is that if you're having these things in such small quantities, so for instance, we like a lot of Asian inspired meals, and they're, requiring, say, a tablespoon of hoisin sauce, which is high in sugar, or a tablespoon of this, or something that it really isn't that consequential. And I mean that. I really don't believe it's that consequential because, again, we're going for what's sustainable. We're
Right.
not going for let's do the bare minimum so we can get through this to get to some type of goal. And then now we're going to eat like this from now on and never have some of those flavors, some of which may even be tied to culture. In our family, we love ethnic foods, period, from all areas. And so sometimes that's what that means. And maybe I'm not always able to make my spaghetti sauce. Most times I do. But if I'm doing turkey meatballs and that's been a little bit labor intensive, that may be a day I don't want to make my sauce and I may just use a jar and it's okay.
And it's
So
okay.
that's how we make our food taste good, and especially since we're, not eating triple portions in this house, then some recipes that I see, whatever they call for, I'll use it. And that way I haven't compromised the flavor because remember, on the other side, we're having tons of vegetables. I'll say it cancels it out.
Yeah, I like that idea a lot because if it doesn't taste good, then what are we doing, right? We're not going to enjoy it. We're not going to want to eat it. Now it feels like all the work was not for anything. So
Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Okay, so you've talked about adding vegetables, and I love the idea of experimenting more with cauliflower rice, spaghetti squash for sure. What are some other ways? Because you did say when you were talking about a sauce to kind of take some of the high fat parts out. So
Mhm.
what are some other things that you might substitute in to help a recipe get a little bit healthier?
Well, for instance, I will reduce the amount that's called for. I'll do that a lot when it comes to heavy whipping cream because honestly, heavy whipping cream, if you eat dairy, makes everything taste so good. So I'll just reduce the amount. If something calls for butter, in some cases I will omit it altogether because I know, you learn flavor profiles of things. So reducing the amount is one. I think we talked about the seasonings. That certainly helps. One other thing that I do, and I don't know if it falls in the category of this question, Cheryl, but one thing that I thought about was the number of one pot meals that we do. So for
Mm.
instance, the way that I mentioned making the sauce from a cauliflower and putting it over the broccoli, those were two vegetables. But then what I might also do with something like that is dice up some chicken, throw all of that in there, put a little more cheese on top, and that is a one pot meal that actually has two vegetables. So probably 3 days a week, that's what we have is a one pot meal. And in that case, I don't necessarily have to do so many substitutions. But one of the things that I use often again is cauliflower rice. So I will substitute that for rice. I'll substitute that for orzo. My family isn't a big fan of brown rice. And, from a nutritional standpoint,
Right.
if you're having white rice in moderation, it's not the worst. But for the sake of not just eliminating white or brown rice, but introducing more vegetables, that's a substitution that we make often. So substituting isn't just to get rid of the carbs. The substitution is to add more vegetables. I want to make that clear because there will be times that we do eat carbs. But I tell you, cleanup becomes much easier when everything is all in one pot. So, again, it's just kind of looking for ways to reduce quantity or eliminate things that I don't think the dish has to have so that overall I can honestly present the dish and say, this is a healthy version of this dish.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. I like that. Now, what about specifically, because this episode is coming out in early December.
Okay.
And so, the holidays are upon us. No matter what type of holiday we celebrate, there's something going on in December and January.
Yep.
We're eating and drinking. What tips would you have for people who are feeling a little worried about kind of going through the next few weeks?
But it's a great question because because this time of year causes so much angst. And usually when that anxiety starts to set in is when the person says, you know what, I'll just wait till January 1st,
Yep.
and there's a lot of time between now and January 1st. So, I coach even on how to handle gatherings, how to handle this time of year when you're out. And one of the things that was always hard for me when I was a dieter was going to an event and having like my healthy protein shake in my purse. And then I'm in a corner eating, drinking that or having, a bar, or, I've already asked the hostess, what are you having? And maybe there's some vegetables, but I've got this little container with some fresh broccoli and ranch. And so I don't think that's the way to navigate it.
Right.
What I do think you need to do is be prepared. Be as prepared as you can. And again, since vegetables are so filling, if you're able to know what's going to be at a place that you go, or even in preparing things at home for yourself, maybe there are just certain foods that are associated with this time of the year and how they smell when you're fixing them, and going back to culture and all of that. And I think to try to suppress that, I mean, it's just not, it just doesn't work. And so if you have certain dishes that you love, like a dish that I just absolutely love, and I've almost mastered how to make it, was my aunt's dressing. She didn't do
Mm.
stuffing, she did dressing. Okay, so there's a lot of stuff in this dressing, and I'll make it. Now, of course, we have tons of different sides and vegetables with that dressing, and I just don't eat so much of it. That's the other thing. But you don't want to take away from the occasions because it's about a diet. Find ways to make healthy decisions within those occasions. I mean, that's the thing, because so many people will just throw away all the progress that they've made all year. So it's not to say just go and throw all caution to the wind. But even with some of the things that we've talked about today, what's wrong with doing those most of the time over the next couple of months? Most of the time. And then there's going to be these few occasions here and there where maybe you don't do that day. And maybe you say, look, I'm going to have exactly what I want. And that may even include the glass of wine or the margarita. But most of the time, actually, the rule of thumb I like to live by is at least 80% of the time, make what you know to be healthy decisions, or choose healthy options. And if nothing else, healthier, because we know that there are degrees of healthy. So there's ways to still have dessert, to still have some of those things that you like. When done thoughtfully and with preparation, I've seen plenty of people go through this time of the year and come out on the other side the way they went in. And if that's the case, that's a win.
Yes, it is.
That is a win. If you can come out the way that you went in versus coming out and, oh no, I gained 20 pounds
Right.
over the past month and a half, then that's a win. And you can do that. That's what's called maintenance. That's what makes whatever you do, or that's what makes it so critical that however a person chooses to live, and especially if the choice is a healthy lifestyle, that it be sustainable so that they can weather the storm of holidays and weddings and baby showers and all the things that are never going to stop, that we want to enjoy without
Yes.
always being the one in the corner eating the carrots and broccoli.
You know what? I really love that because I'm a big fan of protein shakes, but I would not take it to a party and drink it in the corner. I would have it for breakfast or something,
Or before you go, and then you're not as hungry when you get there. But yes, I have done that before because I thought I'm just so committed, and there's nothing that's gonna, I've done it for a Super Bowl party before, and you talking about miserable. Sitting
Mm.
there with my own food and my little lettuce and a little Tupperware with some low fat dressing, and everyone else is having wings. No, no. Have the protein shake before, as you said, and I think that's a great strategy as well.
Yeah, and oftentimes people have some type of vegetables with dip or something,
Mhm.
right? So fill up on those. It's a
More
good
of
thing too.
those and maybe fewer wings. That's the thing. It's all about adding those vegetables and good sources of protein too, of course.
Yeah, yeah. So this reminds me, I finally learned many years after I started trying to learn how to cook vegetables. So I used to hate vegetables when I was a kid, actually.
Mm.
But I finally learned that my favorite way to add vegetables to a meal is just chop up whatever, put some olive oil and salt and pepper or other spices on it, and stick it in the oven for a while.
Mhm.
And it always comes out good. So,
Even
yeah.
Brussels sprouts. which
Yes.
which I don't love Brussels sprouts, but I'm so glad you mentioned that because we do roast a lot of vegetables too. I got so hung up on the cauliflower and how to modify it, but yes, roasting vegetables is a great way to introduce families to more vegetables because it's just
Mhm.
something about when it caramelizes with that olive oil. Yes, so great way to. I've tried almost every vegetable roasted and it worked.
Excellent.
Hmm.
Excellent. And listeners, you'll have to tell us on social media if what you do to add vegetables to. I'm looking for always more ideas.
Yes.
So, Jessica, tell me, is there anything maybe we've missed? Any other tips or ideas that came to mind for you?
I don't think so. I'll just touch on the whole family dynamic one more time, and that being you don't want your family to hate the not in so much the way that you cook, but because you're trying to make these healthy meals, and sometimes that can get quite redundant. I went through that phase early on of a chicken breast and broccoli, and that got old really quick. So I always say be patient with your family because we talked about how we can get our families to do this. It may not be overnight. These are just some of the things that worked in my family. There
Right.
may be some other things that you have to try, but be patient with them. And then, as with anything, helping them to appreciate the reasons behind why you're wanting to make these changes. And so, the games that we sometimes can play with the spouse or even with our kids, and, to get what we want out of them. And that may even be to be more receptive to, embracing healthier choices. But at the end of the day, we lead by example, so it could be some time before they come around. Some of the suggestions that I've mentioned, I really believe will work with a family that's in transition, because what I don't want you to have to do, which is even harder, is to have to cook two meals. And I see a lot of families doing that.
Yeah.
Mom's got to eat this because she's on a diet and she's cooking a whole nother meal over here.
Mm-mm.
But really, this way of thinking, where you're working on incorporating more vegetables, many cases you can cook the same meal for your family, and then you just add, some healthy greens, healthy proteins, and in time, perhaps they will come around and really just appreciate just appreciate the taste, the flavor, and the benefits of these more healthy choices.
Yeah. So let me see. We're adding vegetables. We're making some substitutions. We're adding spices, which, by the way, is really important. I'm not sure that when I was growing up we ever had much of any flavor on anything.
Mhm.
And we're kind of experimenting to see how our family accepts that, and then adjusting. And I think that's a great kind of mode of going forward for sure.
And they may
Awesome.
just surprise you. They may just surprise you.
You're right. You're right. And eventually we're going to hit on something that everybody loves, right? So
Yes.
keep that one in the rotation once you find it.
And I'm telling you, once you find it, keep it in the rotation. So they kind of know, like clockwork. After mom's been to the store, about 3 days after that, this is what we're going to be having for dinner. And I always tell them, so if you don't like it, you need to let me know now. But
Right.
we really have found our groove with certain dishes that we know we all really love. And so, yeah, that's what we have.
I love it. Awesome. Well, tell us where people can connect with you to maybe connect on social media or find out more about what you do.
Okay, so I am on Instagram at I am underscore Jessica Mitchell, the letter I, then AM underscore Jessica Mitchell. My website is www.imjessicamitchell. And I'm really excited about a free workshop that I did a few weeks ago. And now I have made it available, and that is at imjessicamitchell.com/sustainable-health-workshop. And in that workshop, I really talked, it wasn't just about food, it wasn't just about exercise, but really touched on mindset. And I know, of course, Cheryl, that is your jam too.
Mm-hmm.
And how even with all of the things that we talked about today, if we're not quite in the right headspace for understanding this concept of healthy lifestyle and how that affects, especially how you eat and how you feed your family, it could be a challenge. And so a lot of the workshop deals with that, because the goal is to help a person, and this is what happens when you work with me, show you what you can do today. What small changes can you start today to start living a healthy lifestyle without all the overwhelm? there's a lot of overwhelm out there. So those are the places that you can find me.
That's wonderful. And so, yes, definitely go check out the free workshop, everyone, because that sounds amazing. And yes, building in the mindset is key. Good heavens.
Yes, very important.
And speaking of mindset, last question that my listeners know that I always ask is, we want to know what song you would like to add to the Mood Lift playlist. So your favorite song for putting yourself in a better mood, raising your vibration. What would your choice be?
It was a hard choice. So I'm glad that you asked me ahead of time. And I say that because there were a few different genres. But in each genre, there was one song. And so the one that I chose is called Love Will Follow by George Howard. And so it's an instrumental jazz, but I have played it for years, and it just brings back this particular feel good memory. One of the things that I do for self care, if I can tell you really quick, is that just for me is important. It takes me back to my childhood. Is I like to go out and hand wash my car, which I do about once a week, and because she's my baby, and then I like to get in the car and listen to jazz on a nice drive. So, during the pandemic, my husband's like, go, please get in your car and just go for this drive. And it got me through. And that's at the top of one of my playlists is that song. So I find it to be very calming. And of course, it means something to me because of the memories that it brings back. But I mean, it gets me in a mood of just freedom and self-love. And so I listen to it often.
Wonderful. Freedom and self-love. Well, yes, I'm in.
Yeah.
That's perfect. And the cool thing about this playlist too is that it really is becoming something that has such a variety of things. And, if that one song at any one point doesn't resonate with someone, they can skip it. Come back the next time. Well, awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much for this. I know people are going to really resonate with what you're saying, especially during this time of year, but any time of year. We all have these challenges that we're dealing with all the time. So thank you for joining me.
I appreciate you having me. I love your platform and all that you stand for and share. And so I have loved being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You are welcome. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, I would be so honored if you would take a moment, leave a rating, leave a review, or take a screenshot and share on your social media. Let's get this message out further into the world. Now it's time to head down to the show notes to see the resources I mentioned. We may not have learned this before, but it sure is powerful now.